Hello, welcome to the Crafting Shares. I'm Ruth from Beltane Gifts, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make one of these, which is a bee-themed bookend using techniques from past projects. I'll be popping links to those in the description below. For our bookend, we basically need a foundation, something to attach everything to. So for this, I've got a piece of wood here, and this is a 14cm wide piece of wood that I've just chopped into two sections. I've got a longer section that I'm using for the back and a shorter section for the front. It's about 20 centimeters for this section and 27 centimeters for the back. You don't need to do it that size, that's just the size that I had lying around. And what I've done is I've just drilled a couple of holes just on the base and just screwed in a couple of screws just to hold it all together. There are better ways to do this, but this is the quick way, so it's just quick and easy so I can show you what I'm doing. Now, to hide these screws, I've got myself a piece of this, which is some sticky backed felt, and I'm literally just going to stick that over the top. I've just roughly cut it out, I should have done it a bit better. So we're just going to stick that over the top and just hide those screws, and this also helps protect any surface you put your bookend onto, so that's great. Go. If you were doing it, I'd definitely spend the time and just kind of measure and get a proper sized piece of felt. Not what I've done, which is just hack at it wildly until it's kind of rectangular. There we go. Perfect. That'll do. Okay, so we've got our foundation, so we're going to put that aside for a minute, because what we need to do is attach a piece of fishing line to it now. I'm doing that because I'm going to be sticking some things over the top and I want to hide where I've attached the fishing line. So I've got some of this, and it's 0.25mm fishing wire. This is just the finest one I've got, and I thought it'd be quite good to keep it kind of invisible. And I'm going to use, let's go for about 60 centimeters. I'm not going to need that much, but it's handy to have the extra just in case. There we go. So I'm not sure if you can see that. Hopefully you can't, because that will help with the illusion. So I've got my piece of fishing line. I've just created a little loop, and I'm just going to hold it just kind of towards the top. I've got my heavy duty staple gun. You don't need to do this. If you've got just like a normal staple or little tack or something you can use, or just drill a little hole and stick it through. But in my case, I have got my staple gun, so I'm going to do a couple of staples. Oops. There we go. So I've attached my staples, and I've got myself a large hammer, and I'm just going to go over the top of the staples just to make sure that they're nice and attached and flat, because I don't want them to show up. So we've got our fishing line attached. I've pulled that tight, and I can give it a good old tug and it's not going anywhere, which is great news. So what we need to do next is to attach our foam. What I've got is just some normal upholstery foam. It's about so thick, which is, trusty ruler, it was about 5 centimeters thick. You can use thinner stuff if you want to, or thicker stuff, whatever you've got, and all you have to do is just cut it into the shape you want. Now I want my hill to be kind of sloping downwards, so what I've done is I've cut a section off here. I just used my scissors and just had a good old hack, and the section that I've removed, which is this bit here, there we go, so that's what it was like before. What I'm going to do is turn it round and just pop it up the top so that I've got more of that slope. Go, and that's going to go just here. Now don't worry about the shape not being quite what we want. What I'm going to do is glue this into place and then go over the top with some core fibre just to get the shape right, and then cover it with some coloured fibre. So first off, we need to do some gluing. Got my glue and my stick. I'll need my scissors again just to take the lid off. Now this is multi-purpose impact instant contact adhesive. You can use other glues if you like. I found that this works quite well for me. I got this one from Screwfix. You can get it online though. It is solvent based, so just make sure that you've got plenty of ventilation. So I'm going to stick this piece, the little piece, on first. I'm going to get a big splodge of glue and just stick it on. Please excuse the sound of the car outside. That'll be the neighbours. There we go. So big splodge of glue. Oops. And I'm just going to put that on there. Then just same again on the bottom. So I'm just going to squidge that into place. So I'm just going to put this out of the way. Okay, so I've got my bag full of rice and I've got a piece of pre-cut acrylic felt. Now this felt is 14 centimetres square, so it's going to fit onto the back of my bookend. So what I'm going to need is some blue fibre, and this is going to be the sky in the background. So I'm going to cover most of it with blue and then add some white clouds, and then at the bottom I'm going to start attaching some green fibre that's going to come down off this onto the foam. So blue fibre first. I'm going to be using my finer felting needle for this. I'm still using the 38 gauge star. You can use just a generic fine needle or medium sized needle, just figure out what works best with your stabbing. And this is carded Corriedale fibre. It's got a slightly shorter staple, so the fibre length is just that bit shorter, and it's great for covering things. You can use roving as well, that works really well, but I've got this handy, so this is what I'm going to use. And for this I want to cover the whole thing, so I'm going to start at this top right hand corner for me, and what I'm going to do is just lay it here right in the corner and just stab down at a 90-degree angle. And I'm just doing lots of little stabs. You don't want to go too deep because basically you'll be attaching it to the cushion. So there you go, you can see the bits that are coming through. And I'm just going to work my way over the whole thing just like this and cover it with the blue fibre, and then I'll show you how to attach the clouds. Okay, 20 minutes of stabbing, and I just realised that had I had just a plain piece of blue acrylic felt I could have used that instead. We've covered it. So I'm going to show you how to do the clouds, but if you do have just a plain piece of blue acrylic felt, use that instead. Okay, so for the clouds I've got some off-white Corriedale carded fibre, and you can either go for kind of like wispy realistic looking clouds, or you can go for some really sort of chunky cartoony clouds. I think because the whole thing is kind of cartoony, I'm going to go for the cartoony ones. So what I'm going to do is just lay the fibre where you want it, and then what you do is you just stab round in the shape of the cloud you want to create. So I'm going to have a nice little round top. I'm just stabbing straight down, 90-degree angle, just inside of the fibre itself, and that way I've got some fibre I can move about. What we're going to do is just do some rounded bits, just some lumpy, bumpy, rounded bits. There we go. And you can't tell right now, but if you just pull the fibre in really gently, you'll see that it's starting to outline. So just pull them in and just stab round. Just take it slow, it gives you a bit more control over the shape you end up with. And then once you've got the outline that you're after, all we have to do is stab down over the top of all the lumpy bit in the middle. And because we've done the outside edge first, it'll just pull tight hopefully on those bits, just keeping that shape. And if in doubt, if there's any bits sticking out, just stab inwards, 45-degree angle, just catch that fibre and stab it towards the centre, and that way it just pushes everything in, keeps all that fullness to the middle. So that's the first one done. I'm probably going to do another one just up here, and I'll get back to you in just a few minutes. There we go, so there's our other cloud. What I want to do now is start attaching the green section. So I'm just going to need to grab my bookend for a moment, because what I want to do is work out where I need to start it from. So as the hill is just starting up here, I just want to go just a little bit up, so probably about 1 centimetre up I'm going to start attaching. And I'm going to attach it all the way across, because I can fill these sections here in with some core fibre. So I've got this nice kind of a yellowy green that I'm going to be using, and what I want to do is just attach sections of it so that I can merge it into the bit that's going to cover the foam. So I'm going to pull off a few sections, about 10 centimetres long. I think I'm going to need about 3 just to go all the way across, just so it covers the whole of this bottom layer here. And what I'm going to do is just stab along just in a line, just catching those ends. Go, and then I'm just going to fold down this top section here just to give us a nice kind of smooth line, and just want to make sure this is nicely attached. It needs to be reasonably firmly attached so that we don't pull it off when we're felting it into the foam. Go, just peel that. Brilliant, so we've got that attached for now. Now before we glue this bit on, we just need to sort out this edge here. So what I'm going to do is just catch these fibres, pinch them between finger and thumb, and then just work down with my needle just between my finger and the felt. And what this is doing is it's just catching those loose fibres, wrapping them around the edge and just kind of felting them into place a little bit. The glue's going to do most of the holding. This is just to kind of neaten up that edge ready. Okay, so that glue should be dry enough now that we can felt into it. I've got myself some core fibre to use, and I'm just going to bulk up the edges and just kind of cover the whole thing so that we've got something to felt our colour into. And this core fibre is just kind of a rough fibre that's really good for bulking things out. It seems to come together quite quickly as well, which is great. So I'm just going to cover the whole thing using this and just come out to the edges, just fill in any gaps, and just bring up this top bit so that we've got something to add our green to. This is going to take a few minutes. There we go. I've finished covering the foam with some core fibre. It did take quite a while because the fibre doesn't felt into the foam because the foam's got nothing for it to attach to. So what you're doing with the needle is just kind of pressing sections of the fibre into it, and that just holds everything in place until it's fully covered. And once you've fully covered it, the fibre will attach to the rest of the fibre, so it felts together over the top and just creates like a coating that will hold in place. So now that's there, I'll be able to felt the green fibre into it and that will stay put, which is brilliant. So we need to attach our backing piece, so if I just put that down, what we're going to do is just glue the blue on and then felt the green into place. Before we do that though, we need to make sure that our piece of fishing line, ooh, you can see that there, isn't going to get stuck under. So what I'm going to do is with a needle, we'll try this one, I'm just going to thread the piece of wire through the needle, figure out where the wire is going to come through, and all I'm going to do is just sew it through. There we go. And once that's glued into place, the wire is just coming through, so that's all sorted. So I'm just going to fold that down, grab my glue again, and I'm just going to put the glue onto the wood. Okay, spread that out. And I'm going to pull my wire tight, slide the blue bit down, kind of get it in place. Okay, squish it down. Okay, so the backing's pretty much attached now, which is great. And what I'm going to do is start felting this into place. Now I did manage to break my large needle whilst I was felting because I was basically stabbing at a weird angle and not paying attention to what I was doing. So I've moved down to my medium needle and I'm going to start attaching this using the medium needle. Now the trick here is not to pull everything too tightly. We need to kind of squish everything up a little bit, make sure there's a bit of give, and try not to stab the wood too much. And the reason that we're not pulling it tight is just because if you do, you can end up with lines in it. So if you just make sure there's a bit of a, see it from the side there, a little bit of a ridge of fibre to stab into, it felts in a lot easier and a lot neater. So I'm just going to do exactly as I did for the background, little stabs close together. There's going to be a bit of a gap here, so I'm going to fill this up with green fibre once I'm done. But first I'm just going to stab all this into place and then cover the rest here, fill in the gap, and then come back to you. I've finally finished covering the base section here. There are a few little bits that I could probably do with going over, but I am going to be covering this with some flowers, so I might just be a bit strategic in where I stick those. So yes, we can put that to the side for a minute. The next bit we're going to be making are our flowers to go on there. So I need my felting pad again. This is what we're going to be making. Now these flowers are ones that I did buy in. I haven't cut these out myself. I bought these in and they were thicker, so I've cut them in half. They're acrylic felt pre-cut flowers, and I'm just going to be felting in the centre. If you wanted to make your own flowers from acrylic felt, cut them out. I have got a video on how to do that and how to make these, so definitely check that out. I'll pop that down in the description. So I'm going to show you how I did the small version. So you'll need to take your pre-cut flower or cut your own. Then you're just going to need a little bit of the yellow carded Corriedale, roll it into a bit of a ball, and then we're going to place it in the centre, stab it a couple of times in the middle just to anchor it. You can see the fibre getting sucked in there. Ooh, and just see it coming out the other side. And all we're going to do is stab round the outside with the needle pointing towards the centre at all times. Just keep rotating it, stabbing in, just catching the fibre and tucking it in around that outside edge of that circle we want to create. And what this does, it pushes all the fibre there into the centre and helps form a dome, which is what we want. And just keep working round and stabbing just slightly higher each time you go round, and what will happen is that dome will start to form. Once it's nice and secure, you can see there it's quite high, we'll just do a couple of stabs higher up, and then just keep going round again, just aiming for any bits that stick up more than others. Go until you're happy with it, and then you can just give it a little pinch if you want to. Now in this case it's slightly over to one side, so what I can do is just stab it from the other direction. So that's how to do just one of the standard ones. If it's a larger flower, then just do more fibre. So next we're going to be making the bee. I've got some yellow carded fibre for the stripes and some white carded fibre, well, off-white. I've also got some black roving, so I'm just going to take a section of this. I don't have any black carded handy, so the roving's going to have to do. So I'm just going to pull it apart, make it as messy as possible, and this just gets the felting process going by getting those fibres just kind of intermingled. It just makes it easier and everything holds together better. So I'm going to get that nice and messy, roll it into a bit of a ball, and then just going to felt it as though I was felting a bit of a rugby ball kind of shape. So I'm just kind of rolling it up a little bit and then stabbing down on the open edges. I'm just pinching it together just because that's going to help. It's getting those fibres closer together. It means I need to do less stabbing, and normally I wouldn't do that, but this isn't going to show because this is going to be inside, so I can get away with it. Okay, it's kind of the shape we're after, but don't worry too much. As I say, we're going to be adding to this, so I'm going to start the bum end with a little bit of white, and again just rubbing that together a little bit, just bringing those fibres closer, and I'm just going to stab around in a circle just over one of the ends, and what I want is just kind of a band of white just on one end. I'm just using little jabs. This is my finest needle, just a couple of little jabs just to kind of hold things in. Don't want to change the shape too much. I'm just catching those loose fibres, just tucking them towards the bum end there. I want to keep the bands as clean as possible. Okay, so next it's a band of black, so I'm just going to leave that as is. Then it's going to be a band of yellow, so I'm just going to take a little strip of my yellow carded and I'm just going to roll it between my hands just to create a little band there. I'm going to start with one of the ends. Okay, I'm just stabbing down the middle to start off with, working my way around. And what this is doing, it's basically just tacking the yellow in place at the moment, and I'm going to go from both edges. So I'm going to work from one side and then the other, just catching the fibres and felting them in a bit better. It's quite fiddly because it's little. And I'm just trying to catch those loose fibres, again just so that we can keep the bands quite plain. Don't worry too much though, because we can always add some more black over the top. and just turned it around. I'm going to do it the other way as well, and I'm always pointing towards the centre, and that's just going to help keep that line in place. Okay, we're going to need another band of yellow just further down. Just use a little bit less this time. Okay, same again, just going to attach one end and then wrap it round. Okay, I'm just going over the end now just to firm up the head a little bit, and then just go over any lines, just make sure they're nice and defined. I'm just going to use my scissors just a little bit just to kind of trim some of the extra fluff off. It's not the most realistic bee, but you get the idea. And as usual, you can spend as much time or as little time on this as you like. Okay, so we're going to need some little wings. Now, there is a whole video on how to make a bumblebee brooch, so you can follow that if you like, and it will show you how to make the wings. I basically am going to cut them out of this plastic that came from a DVD case, and I'm going to colour them in with some black pen. Go, and score them with my awl. And I've got my plastic wings, if you can just about see those. I've got my awl and my Sharpie. I've got a metal box here, which is just because the board I'm working on, I don't want to damage it too much. So I'm just going to score just some veins and things onto my wings. Now this is why I'm using this plastic, because it's very stretchy and it's less likely to tear than some of the others. Lines, a bit of pen. Just going to rub those together a little bit. Okay, I'm going to leave those to dry for just a minute, and then I'm going to wipe off some of that pen. In the meantime, I'm going to find my needle, and what we're going to do is sew on our little bee to our fishing line that we attached earlier. I'm just going to thread the wire onto my needle and sew through my bee. I think I'm going to go from back to front with this one rather than through the middle. So I'm just sewing back through the bee. Now I think it'd be quite nice to give him some eyes, so I might as well use this thread. I'm going to sew back through to the front. So I've got a couple of black plastic 3mm beads that I'm going to use. Just going to pop one onto my needle. Sew through from one side of the head to the other. And the other one. I'm going to sew back through. I'm just going to go through them both a couple of times. This is going to help keep the wire in place as well, which is really good. And then back down to the bum. So if you can see that there, just gives him cute little eyes. Okay, so I'm just sewing through to the front again. I'm going to come back through into the back. Oops. Into the black section there. Okay, so I'm just going to grab my wings, which should have dried a bit by now, and with the awl I'm just going to scratch over them a little bit, just because we don't want them quite that dark. And what should hopefully happen is that some of the ink goes into the lines we drew in the wing already and just highlights them a little bit, and just leaves a little bit of black on the wings, just so they stand out just a bit. So I've got my needle and thread coming out of his back. I'm just going to pull that through, lay my little wings on, make sure his eyes are straight. go, I'm just going to sew through his wings a little bit. Okay, then back through, out of his bum again, pull my needle off, and then with some scissors I'm just going to snip off the leftover. Now I want to hide the join just a little bit with a bit of black fibre, so I've got some just here. Again, I'm going to mix them together and just roll them into a bit of a ball. I'm going to lay it just between the wings and then just stab it into either side. So I'm trying not to stab through the wings at this point, just because I don't want them to tear. So I'm just going to stab to the front and the back, and this will help spread the wings out a little bit as well. And I'm just going to keep going back and front, just catching the fibre. And what should happen is it should tighten up and flatten down a little bit. There we go, so there's our little bumblebee. So I've made my bee, I attached him and everything, and the cable was a bit long, so I tried shortening it with a staple, managed to break it. So I need to do something differently. First off, let's just hide the offending staple gun. I'm going to find my flowers and just start laying them out, just to get an idea of where they're going to go. So I've got some little ones, I've got some big ones. So we're going to stick some little ones towards the back so they look like they're further away, just to give us kind of a pretty little hillside scene. So I'm going to glue these into place just with a little splodge of glue. And if you don't have a glue gun, you can use either normal glue or you can felt them into place, so you don't have to worry too much about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle and thread, pop it on the thread, and I'm going to sew through the bee again. I've cut off the excess from before, and I'm going to go from back to front and back again. Now, because of the way the fibre works, I should be able to move him just a little bit. Yep, I can slide him up and down as I want to. So we're going to sew through the flower. I want to go through a couple of times just to make sure it's nice and secure. There we go. I want to make sure the fishing wire is nice and tight before we glue the flower down. Go. I'm going to cut off a bit of this because it's quite long, not all of it. I need to leave some just in case. Go, and I'm going to curl this up and just use the glue gun once more. Pop that there, stretch it quite tight and pop it down. Got a bit poking out, so I'm going to snip that off. Okay. I'm just going to slide him back a little bit. There you go. So if we look from the side, he's flying, kind of. So there we go, that's our bookend finished. It didn't turn out quite how I had it planned. I was planning on having the bee being held there magnetically, as if by magic. But I think we're just going to have to make do with some fishing line. It's almost as magical. I think if I did this again, I would do a few things differently. I definitely would have used just a plain piece of blue acrylic felt for the background, which would have saved an hour or so of stabbing, and I would have taken it all the way down to the bottom, and it would have been more for me to attach my green to. Then I wouldn't have had to worry too much about the hills. Maybe a few more clouds, maybe a few birds sewn in. Yeah, so for the next one I think I would definitely do it differently, but I think he's still quite cute, and I do like the way he kind of waggles. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, be sure to click on that thumbs up button. If you're enjoying the content and you want to watch some more videos, then click on that subscribe button and the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any future ones. Any comments, any questions, pop them in that comment section. I love to hear from you. Big shout out to everyone who's subscribed so far. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I think it's amazing that I've got people apparently all over the world now watching the videos. It's just crazy, but I like it. And yes, thank you for watching. Come back next time. It will be something hopefully a little bit simpler for me, and hopefully it won't all go wrong like it did this week. Yeah, fingers crossed. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.